Good afternoon, 3:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, October 16th, year 2023. Going to do a chapter reading today from a 2020 book that contains a collection of breakdowns and analyses of different companies, different business strategy overviews for companies in pharma and biotech. And the book that we're selecting, that we found, has a chapter for a company which is a big part of this 245 series called Centocor. Not much is on Wikipedia about them, yet they are a critical company with respect to the history of monoclonals, with respect to some of the key, possibly the key underlying patent disputes which started all of the insanity over antibody patents, which of course is an extension of protein patents overall. So what I wanted to do first is to just highlight this diagram here, and I've showed this before. So Centocor is, they've been purchased and broken up and so on. They were still around in the year, although a subsidiary of another company, in the year 2010, 11, and 12. And if you go to many of the pharma magazines or journals, they will say there was a protein patent issue or dispute between Centocor and Genentech. The person who handled that case, one of the key attorneys in that case was Les Weinstein. And Les Weinstein's the father of Brett and Eric Weinstein. It is that connection that initially made me curious, wanted to learn more, because this company, Centocor, which was eventually started to get its roots go all the way back to late 1970s in Philadelphia in the United States, had several co-founders, one of whom is Hilary Koprowski. Hilary Koprowski is now deceased. He lived to a good old age. Koprowski, along with Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin, are one of the three people who each produced polio vaccines. And they all had their own little controversies regarding them. Oftentimes, the topic of Koprowski comes up with respect to potentially having an association with some contaminations, or using different types of cell lines which might have introduced alleged to be viruses. Koprowski, of course, his roots, as we've said before, go back to Poland pre-World War II, and an eyebrow-raising story of how he wound up in the United States, being one of the luckiest men in Poland who not only did they escape the Nazis, but they actually went to Brazil and wound up working for the Rockefeller Institute regarding vaccine research in 1941 and 1945, and then came straight to the United States. I'm sorry to say, and I know I don't mean to diminish the tragedies of World War II, but that's a tough story to take in, knowing what we know about the Rockefeller Institute and research they were doing at that time, and also his culture samples, as we've learned, tie into other people we researched. So Hilary Koprowski, historically, in this whole business of viruses, vaccines, genetics, proteins, etc., is one of the most important people, to understand his career. Knowing that he's a co-founder of Centocor, and Centocor in this hugely visible, at least in the realm of pharma, patent case, with one of the attorneys, Les Weinstein, and with Les Weinstein's both of his children being two of the key people with respect to the intellectual dark web. That is what led us to wanting to learn more about Centocor, and also a part of this person map, if you will. Koprowski has a mentorship, which includes two key people, Stanley Plotkin and Dave Weiner. Now, many know about Stanley Plotkin as this very dark force with respect to creating so many different childhood vaccines. Some people celebrate him. I want to leave this video up on my main channel as long as possible. Nonetheless, quite a reputation. And Dave Weiner. Now, Weiner is one of the lesser-known names, not exactly a household name. However, he became the director of the Wistar Institute after Kaprowski stepped down. And the Wistar goes all the way back, has its roots into, I think, late 1800s, early 1900s. It's not exactly a new facility or institution in Philadelphia in the United States. And Weiner went on with another student of his to co-found a company called Viral Genomics, which eventually became known as Inovio. Inovio Corporation makes, let's just say, DNA transfection, electroporation technologies, and they, along with, were one of the two forerunners with respect to what are described as vaccine products for COVID. Matter of fact, CEPI, the Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness and Innovations, the two companies that they founded most substantially throughout 1819 and 2020 and really boosted when the COVID breakout started was Moderna and Inovio. Now, Inovio's scientific director was Stanley Plotkin, also in the Kaprowski network, and another person who often claims to be a founder of Inovio, although not really. It's a very complicated corporate structure. Inovio, as we know, it was actually founded as Viral Genomics, or VGX. There was another company in Norway which was created in the late 1990s, which was doing electroporation technology, something that Robert Malone, we know about Robert Malone, is very fond of. Eventually, Viral Genomics, through a very complicated series of acquisitions and sales, bought the Inovio from Norway, took it in, and then over time became rebranded as Inovio. So in a way, Robert Malone is also a co-founder of Inovio, but he was specifically the electroporation technologies. Why does this matter? It matters because Robert Malone's breakout, his entrance into the world, his entrance onto the stage, was on the Dark Horse podcast with Brett Weinstein, the son of Les Weinstein. Also, Malone's associations with Stanley Plotkin also extend to EROS, Tuberculosis Global Vaccine Foundation, as well as Vical Corporation. Vical was is understood to be a visionary with respect to using gene therapy to provide immunizations and vaccines and so on. I am under the understanding that they had what was understood to be a revolutionary vaccine product for HIV in the late 1990s, which was being positioned to be also an anthrax vaccine. And the problems that the United States military was having, which were incredibly well publicized. For some reason, you can't talk about vaccine problems except when it comes to old vaccine technology and the reasons to use the new ones. Then all of a sudden, you can talk about all the problems in the world. And those problems were brought to us through whistleblowers and citizen advocates such as Meryl Nass about the problems with the existing anthrax vaccine in the late 1990s and injuring so many U.S. troops. But fortunately, there were a few companies that had new technologies which, should there happen to have been an anthrax attack, would have saved us all. One of those companies was Vical. And that's where Robert Malone's also, oftentimes he talks about it in many interviews, has his patent connections to Vical Corporation. Vical also had its association through he was brought in as an advisor. I'm not sure he ever received, he'd probably be one of those deals where you receive like stock options or whatever. He might have been on the board as an advisor, also with Stanley Plotkin there. This is a very simple diagram. It doesn't really do a good job at highlighting the order of events, but I just need to keep showing it to emphasize why this legacy company of Centocor I find so interesting and so necessary to keep alive. And I think behind the scenes, the issue of patents, the intellectual property, which government, which country, which corporation, which non-government organization, which political party has access and control over these things is a big reason why certain people are on the stage at certain times. So, with that said, the chapter that we have queued up, I do have a copy of the text. It's on my Centocor page, which I've copied everything I possibly could from the New York Times and other public newspapers and so on, BioWorld, etc. Yeah, in fact, I even put some captured articles about reviewing the Vical issue. Vical, as a matter of fact, I'm glad I just scrolled down. Vical Corporation, this company that was making this revolutionary new vaccine technology, which would have been so helpful to protect the soldiers against anthrax. Should there have been a major anthrax attack on the United States, gee, it's not as if everyone in the United States government wasn't talking about it before September 11th, 2001. But anyways, you will find, according to early press releases, 1998, Vical was receiving its cells from who? Centocor. That's right. This same mysterious little company that 20 years later, was actually only 13 years later, had its patent issues handled by Les Weinstein. All the way back in 1997, 1998, was getting its cell technology from Centocor. Ha! You can see how tight this loop is and how important it is. And you, being here, are among a select group of elite people on the internet, elite researchers that are having access to seeing this loop, to seeing these associations. Very few people know about this, even though the information is being made widely available. Very few people know about this. They don't want to know about this. They will change the subject. They will start wars, potentially even, to not talk about this. So the article that is in question here was in a book, Biotechnology, Entrepreneurship, Leading, Managing, and Commercializing Innovative Technologies. It's the second edition. It came out in 2020. The authors include, I think there's two authors, Laura Marks and Phil Oxon. Now, that's interesting. As a matter of fact, I just put something together here. Laura Marks is the author of the blog of the multi-page, multi-post story from whatisbiotechnology.org. The same person that wrote this this monster article, which we have been reading about the story of Cesar Milstein, and that's why I'm using this as an addendum to that. The same person who wrote that wrote the case study of Centocor. So for some reason, Laura Marks has a big vested interest in this company and defining the narrative. She's motivated. She wrote about it in this 2020 second edition. I don't know when the first edition was, but the What is Biotechnology article, I guessed, was written around 2012 based upon the data that they were using. I could be wrong. It could have been later, but I think it was 2012, which means she has an 8-10 year commitment to talking about Centocor. Why? If she's in Britain, why 10 years later is she still interested in this U.S. company where it was sloppy patent management by Cesar Milstein, who I think was politically active in South America before he went to Britain? Just saying. Sloppy patent work allowed all of this intellectual property to be lost that the UK invested so much money in, went to the United States, but it didn't really go to the U.S. government. At the Wistar Institute and Hillary Kaprowski. I had to do that introduction here, sort of a summary. Hopefully, it's helpful just to see those loops. Let's just read this article here. Okay, I don't know if hopefully I will do my best to finish it. Chapter outline. The estimated value of alliances signed between pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies was $160 billion per annum annually in the year 2011. Underlying the vast sums being paid out for alliances is the fact that such collaboration is a lifeline for pharmaceutical companies scouting for new products to fill their dwindling portfolios in the face of expiring patents and rising generic competition. It is also vital to biotechnology companies seeking to raise funds for their research and development, R&D, and establishing footprint in the market. Right away, I realized that I've overlooked something here. So if the patents for proteins and antibodies are getting more and more difficult to establish because we now have the ability to understand the structure of things with greater specificity, which also highlights that it's less known about how structure and formulation correlates to immunity in people. We used to know less, so we were able to making the patents was easier. However, the older patents are now expiring. And repatenting things is very difficult because of the paradox. The more you know, the less you can patent. How do you get around this? If you can't patent the antibodies, how do you get around it? How do you give people the antibodies but not patent the antibodies? I'm going to wait till you. I want to catch up with the audience here. This is actually, this is going to be mostly a reading. How do you get around it? How do you deal with the unpatentable antibodies? Well, you certainly don't want to stop making the products. We're still, it's a goldmine of information which being extracted from the population. How do you move it forward? Any ideas? Use artificial intelligence to try to front-run the patent development process? Possibly. But you're still ultimately going to, big data computers, it's still going to be determined by a Supreme Court justice. That's the level we're at right now. Supreme Court is spending a lot more time on this topic than most people know. And matter of fact, that's sort of, as Dawn Newway says, that actually buys into the problem. The more you know, the less the more difficult it is to patent it. The only reason they were able to patent these things in the first place was because they had a stupid level of knowledge about them. Ignorance. Thought it was real, but it actually was. They weren't trying to tell science fiction, although they knew that they didn't know everything. But it turned out that they knew next to nothing. Well, here's the answer. You don't make antibodies anymore. That's the answer. And how do you do that? mRNA. If the whole pharma industry and the ability to extract all this genetic data from people is at risk, what do? You don't bother patenting the antibodies anymore. You go straight to mRNA and you give individual people footprints or templates about what to make, and then people turn into their own factories. Now, it's a little bit like robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you still have to make the mRNA. It's not like you just dig it up out of the ground or squeeze it out of a plant. It's still freaking complicated, but you avoid the patent issues. I mean, there's a whole series of other patent issues in that arena, which we haven't really dealt with yet. But you know what? I'm not sure everyone has quite caught up to that just yet. A lot of those patent issues, because they keep saying mRNA is like software. Oh, it's like software. You just plug in the thing. The patenting issues for that apply to what was learned through patent disputes with Microsoft and software companies. It's different. You don't have to worry about all of this uncertainty with respect to how different genomes are working. Can you see this? I mean, I don't mean to pat myself in the back, but this is one of the most plausible explanations as to why there was such a crisis to move to this new technology. It wasn't to save money. It was to get to to get around the problems which were being exposed. Once a body runs a patented mRNA process, are they legally franchised? Are they the right corporation? Dawn New Way asks an excellent question. I'm going to repeat it. I don't have the answer, but we're here to ask these questions and then to go away and think about them. Dawn, once a body runs a patented mRNA process, are they legally franchised of the mRNA corporation? Is the genome franchised? Great questions. I don't know. Are they still legally using the same beings? Are they now products? These questions were tackled with the Human Genome Project, or at least we were told that they were being entertained. I don't know what the answers of these were. I know they were thinking about this crap, though. I also know that a lot of the attorneys, including Les Weinstein, by the way, that were getting involved in these patent issues for proteins and antibodies, were also looking at software. Now, these are two huge money machines. So that connection in of itself is not enough to say, oh, obviously they're related. But when you think about a lot of if all the companies are using the same mRNA platform, then they're not going to be dealing with patents about that, are they? No, they're going to be dealing with the code. Oh, you just plug in the new code. How many times have we heard that? And when it comes to software, they always say, do you patent the final product, what's compiled, or do you patent the code itself? Because every time a piece of code it loads up in a computer, the odds of everything going into the same register, the same piece of memory, of the same value is almost zero. Just like mRNA, the odds of everyone making the exact freaking protein in the exact quantity, all identical, is zero. It turned an unpatentable or an increasingly unpatentable situation, a paradox, into something which everything that was learned about the patent disputes about software is now can be utilized. This is heavy stuff. I know I'm missing a few pieces here of the puzzle, but listen to the antibody patent paradox again. I know you need to listen to other people. You probably get really tired listening to me. But I believe if you focused on this topic, listen to that series again, you're going to be mad that more people aren't talking about this. You're going to be furious because you won't be able to see it any other way. All right, guys, and the whole topic of augmenting DNA. We have to get to that at some point. You don't have one copy of DNA. You have DNA in all your cells, and even if you do change, even if there was an ability to change all the DNA in all your cells at once, which there isn't. Well, let's just say there was. So what? The problem is that your DNA is not actively running. It's not like it's the code. What's actually the machinery that's active in your body, your ribosomes, your proteins, were all already made based upon the old DNA. It's like saying I can just change the code on my computer while the computer is running. You can't. Every linked library that's in memory, every program that's loaded, everything that's on the screen, everything on the disk, everything is already made based upon the standards of the code that was used when the computer was booted. Even if you change that code, you don't change the running system. The system is already running. It already has momentum. You can't change the DNA of a system that's already running. I mean, you can, but it doesn't change. It's not as if it's going all the way back to day zero. everything that is constructed from that point forward is going to be built in its image. You can't do it. SOL, so to say. System out of luck. All right. So, boy, I'm going to need like a whole day just to reread this chapter. The long flight of the arrow, patents and Nazis. Yeah. The patents are important. Let go of the thought that it's all about, protecting profits, and there's way more at stake here than profits. Wow. I may need to, I'm already 33 minutes in. The estimated value of alliance, and I have to reread this paragraph here because it's just so gosh darn important. Hey, Marie, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. The estimated value of alliances between pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies, $160 billion annually, 2011. Underlying vast sums being paid out for alliances is the fact that such collaboration is a lifeline for pharmaceutical companies scouting for products to fill their dwindling portfolios in the face of expiring patents and rising generic competition. It is also vital to biotechnology companies seeking to raise funds for their research and development R&D and establishing a footprint on the market. Since their inception, biotechnology companies have depended on partnerships for their survival and growth. This chapter looks at the pivotal role alliances played in the foundation and growth of Centocor, one of America's pioneering monoclonal antibody, or MAB, companies. Set up in 1979, 3 years after Genentech, the world's first dedicated biotechnology company. I thought it was Cetus Corp, actually. Centocor was among the first handful of biotechnology companies started in the 1970s. Within 5 years of its founding, Centocor had already become a highly competitive and profitable diagnostics company based on monoclonal antibodies. As this chapter shows, much of this success rested on the collaborations its founders secured with research institutes and larger healthcare companies. Through skillful networking, Centocor's executives secured the scientific and technological expertise, products, capital, and market distribution necessary to mature from a small startup company to a major player in the global diagnostic market. In 1992, however, Centocor faced imminent collapse, brought on by its executives' decision to go it alone in the development and marketing of the company's first therapeutic. What saved the company from extinction and allowed it to subsequently succeed in therapeutics was a reversion to its strategy of collaboration. Birth of Centocor. I don't need to hide quite so much here. In May of 1979, Dr. Hilary Kaprowski, a Polish virologist, immunologist, and director of the Wistar Institute, entered a partnership with Michael Wall. Both of these people, by the way, have already been talked about pretty extensively in the Cesar Milstein story. And Michael Wall was an MIT-educated electrical engineer and founder of several electronics, computer, and biological startup companies to establish a new biotech company. Calling the company Centocor, Centocor, Kaprowski and Wall aimed to create, develop, and market diagnostics and therapeutics based upon MABs, monoclonal antibodies. MABs, monoclonal antibodies, were new to the scientific and commercial world, having been devised by Cesar Milstein and Georges Kohler at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge in 1975. Derived from natural antibodies, or proteins produced by the immune system that are designed to attach to and inactivate foreign particles or antigens, monoclonal antibodies were produced as a result of the fusion of myeloma cells with antibodies taken from the spleen of previously immunized animals, providing for the first time a long-lasting and standardized form of antibodies that could be used for various medical applications. Monoclonal antibodies were quickly adopted by various academic and commercial laboratories globally. This included Kaprowski and his team at the Wistar Institute, using cells sent by Milstein. Kaprowski and his colleagues began to develop monoclonal antibodies against the influenza virus and malignant cancer tumors. I wonder if this is going to get into any of the patent issues. Interesting. It's just so generous. Milstein was just so generous. The Argentinian was so eager to send all this intellectual property to Kaprowski. So what? The German government didn't get to protect it. So what? Margaret Thatcher was furious. We won't get into that. Funded by government grants, this research formed the basis for patent applications in 1978. Wow. Can you read this? Wow. Okay, so this research was funded by the British government, and then Milstein. Oh, he was just a nice guy. He just shared all his samples with Kaprowski and many other people. Funded by government grants, this research formed the basis for patent applications in 1978. Which government? I think it was the United Kingdom. And Centocor is in Philadelphia. How does that help the United Kingdom? Granted in 1979 and 1980, these patents were the first ever patents for monoclonal antibodies. In 1978, Kaprowski offered to license the patents to Boehringer Ingelheim for $500,000 annually over 10 years. The pharmaceutical company, however, had dragged out negotiations for 6 to 8 months before saying no on the basis that they saw no future for monoclonal antibody products. Frustrated by his experience with Boehringer Ingelheim and other companies, Hillary Kaprowski realized that the only way forward could be to establish a separate company. He decided to do this in partnerships with Michael Wall. At the time Wall and Kaprowski started discussing their plans for a company, Wall was getting itchy feet for a change in scenery, having just sold Flow Laboratories, a company he had set up to produce and sell cell cultures and related products. Interesting, they also failed to show that Cesar Milstein also lost intellectual property and some patent dispute to this Flow Laboratories and Michael Wall. So on two fronts, our little friend Cesar Milstein back in the 70s and 80s lost intellectual property, which should have been owned by the British government. To someone that was potentially a Nazi. That's remarkable. Wall had various business schemes in mind, including glowing orchids. Of course, his idea of founding a company based on flowers, however, soon dissipated to talking to Kaprowski. What captured Wall's attention was the fact that Kaprowski believed he could have a hand in monoclonal antibody diagnostic very quickly. This was named 1909, a monoclonal antibody developed at the Wistar Institute that Kaprowski saw as having potential as a diagnostic for pancreatic cancer. Setting up an office in downtown Philadelphia. Oh, by the way, Inovio's roots are in, I'm just going to say it, Philadelphia. It was one of the reasons why they set up one of their headquarters in Philadelphia. Setting up an office in downtown Philadelphia in May 1979, Wall started to build Centocor's executive team as the company chairman with scientific support from Kaprowski and the Wistar Institute. One of the first to join the team was Ted Allen. There's no way he could be related to Paul Allen. Allen's background was ideal for Centocor, as he had been a marketing manager at Corning Medical, a Boston-based division of Corning Glassworks. More importantly, he came from a company that had begun to establish a strong portfolio of diagnostic immunoassays. Such diagnostics were rapidly replacing the more traditional chemical-based tests that had dominated the diagnostic markets since the 1940s. With Allen on board, and again, that's Ted Allen, it's not Paul Allen. With Allen on board, Centocor soon attracted the interest of another Corning employee who would prove pivotal in moving the company forward. I did a reading on his biography and his obituary, and it's Hubert Shoemaker. Of course, Shoemaker, unfortunately, predictably it seems, did not live as long as one would have expected. This was Hubert Shoemaker, one of Allen's former Corning colleagues who had been instrumental in building up Corning's pioneering portfolio of diagnostics. Hubert Shoemaker was a biochemist by training and had completed a doctorate at MIT within a department at the cutting edge of biotechnology research. His inspiration came from the profound disabilities of his daughter, who was born with lyssencephaly, a rare brain malformation causing severe mental disability and motor dysfunction. Shoemaker joined Centocor initially in an unofficial capacity, helping with research and planning while continuing to work at Corning. In early 1980, however, he began officially taking over the position of chief executive officer in the wake of a sudden departure by Allen. Dig into him at some point. Within months of joining Centocor's team, Shoemaker had sourced another individual who soon became vital to the company's operation. This was Vincent Zurawski, Zurawski. He joined Centocor in August of 1979 as the company's first chief scientific officer. Zurawski came well-equipped for the post. A chemist by training, he had been a pioneer in monoclonal antibody production at Harvard Medical School and Mass Gen Hospital, MGH. Isn't that where... That's where Michael Callahan worked years later. Michael Callahan is also, most people don't know this, a monoclonal antibody guy, more than a vaccine guy, where he had held a postdoctoral research fellowship. The collaborative journey begins. The founders decided to focus their resources initially on diagnostics, predicting $17 million in revenue by the year 1984, with therapeutics as their long-term goal. Diagnostics were easier to develop and could win regulatory approval more easily than therapeutics, thereby enabling faster revenue growth. In addition to developing diagnostic products, they aimed to supply antibodies on contract to other companies for using their proprietary diagnostic kits. Entering the diagnostics sector was ambitious. The $2 billion diagnostics market was highly competitive, dominated at that time by healthcare giants such as Abbott Laboratories, Hoffman La Roche, Warner Lambert, who had developed tests, and Warner Lambert, who had developed tests that could only be analyzed through their own proprietary instruments. In 1979, two companies were already offering monoclonal antibodies on a commercial basis. Sera Lab, a British company with which Cesar Milstein was involved, and Hybrid Tech, a San Diego startup founded in 1978 by Ivor Royston, Royston, a professor at the University of California, San Diego, and his research assistant, Howard Berndorf, Birndorf. Both of these companies were marketing monoclonal antibodies as reagents to researchers and exploring their use as diagnostics. The competitive landscape, however, quickly changed. By 1983, more than 150 companies, including large pharmaceutical companies, had monoclonal antibodies-based diagnostic programs, and 23 such diagnostics were being marketed, and another 100 were in the pipeline. From the start, Wall and Kaprowski saw collaboration as key to their business model. The very name Centocor, which was derived from the words cento, that describes in Latin an old garment made of hundreds of patches of material, or a literary or musical composition made up of parts of other works, and two, core, C-O-R-E, as the center. Centocor's collaborative philosophy was unusual for the time. Narrators note, I think that the collaboration means that they will steal the patents from whoever they can steal them from. That's collaboration. Narrators note, and sarcasm over. In 1979, most startup biotech companies were trying to do everything internally from the discovery process through development. Centocor's founders believed, however, that rather than depending solely on in-house research, they should use internal skills to identify and fund prominent external researchers and laboratories working in areas where the company wanted to develop and where there was an appropriate license for the technology. As Wall told Forbes magazine in May of 1985, quote, You can have a garage full of PhDs working on a project, and 9 times out of 10, some guy across the street is going to come up with a discovery that beats them all, unquote. Wow. A lot of software companies wound up being having the very same model. The ones that ran through collaboration. And collaboration means buying other companies as they came up and stealing their intellectual property as appropriate, tended to be more successful. Central to Centocor's policy of collaboration was Wall and Shoemaker's remarkable ability to network. By being well-connected and plugged into the academic world, Wall and Shoemaker realized they stood a better chance of finding promising products at a relatively early stage when they were not unduly expensive. As Shoemaker later recalled, quote, "We realized it was a lot cheaper to roam academia and pay a royalty back for what we developed than start our own research facilities. Collaboration was the best way to be competitive." And this is around the same time as that, what was that act? It was the Bain-Dole Act, which was passed in 1980, which was also known as the Patent, Trademark, and Law Amendments. Oh, Lordy. By Birch Bay of Indiana, Bob Dole, Kansas. The one thing that this is known for is the ability for state educational facilities that have basically been loading up on intellectual property through their own research and start companies with them. Continuing on. One of Centocor's strongest academic collaborations was with the Wistar Institute, fueled in part by Kaprowski's connection with the company. In 1979, Centocor signed 3 licensing deals with the Institute for rights to 4 approved and pending patents for diagnostic and therapeutic purposes. Centocor paid $25,000 upfront and agreed to make royalty payments for 4%, 6%, or any resulting products. It's going to be really shocking. Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, it does. It does mention the Bayh-Dole Act. Mr. Kulak. Mr. Kulak, how do you do it? How do you see all these connections? In the Bayh-Dole Act, the one college that profited most from that was the University of Washington. The college that profited most from this was the University of Washington. You could say the whole biotech sector in Seattle is thanks to that act. Guess who was one of the regents of the college? Oh my goodness. Was it one of Bill Gates' parents? Oh yes, it absolutely freaking was. All these patent issues, we just talked earlier about the fact that the way patents were going, they were moving from the model of dealing with all these complexities, increasing complexities, which are now being revealed with proteins and antibodies, moving towards the software model. Well, guess which company was at the core of most of those software patent disputes? Oh my goodness, it was Microsoft, wasn't it? Wasn't it Microsoft? Yes, it absolutely was, everyone. It was Microsoft. I have to reread that one. Centocor's alliance with the Wistar was helped by the fact that the latter had its own charter and board. This allowed greater flexibility for academic company collaborations than otherwise was normally possible in the late 1970s. Although the pioneering academic company relationship between Centocor and the Wistar raised some concern about conflict of interest, for one Wistar board member, this was soon overcome. The relationship the relationship set an important precedent for the partnerships Centocor entered thereafter. I still don't see any issue here. I still don't see this article bringing up the patent issue about how Margaret Thatcher was so freaking outraged and many other people in the British government after having invested so much, bringing in an Argentinian scientist that was sloppy with the patents. All I see is this Kaprowski dude was so smart. Centocor, like other biotech companies, was enormously helped by the passing of the Bayh-Dole Act in the late 1980s, which established for the first time uniform guidelines for the patenting and commercialization of government-funded academic research. Between 1985 and 1990, Centocor's partnerships with research institutions grew from 15 to more than 80 worldwide, many involving license and license option agreements. These collaborations were vital to Centocor's business, providing materials for some of its early products. Crucially, it allowed the company to keep its costs to a minimum while increasing sales. Between 1984 and 1990, Centocor's R&D budget remained at the same level while its sales increased fivefold. Beautiful. That's beautiful. So in addition to Cesar Milstein's work, they got intellectual property from elsewhere. They just bought it. It just wound up in their hands. And yes, as we've shown earlier, it was cell technology from Centocor that was key to being used by other gene therapy companies such as Vical. The same company where Robert Malone frequently says he had intellectual property that he believes stolen from him. That it was actually his ideas. In addition to partnering with research institutions to fill its product pipeline, Centocor pursued marketing alliances. Facing a highly competitive environment, Wall and Shoemaker realized they could strengthen the company's market position by having licensing agreements with companies that had well-established market positions and distribution channels. This would eliminate the time and expense of establishing Centocor's own distribution mechanism and facilitate faster entry to the market. Centocor's team deliberately secured agreements with key diagnostics companies whereby the company would buy and sell Centocor's antibodies in completed test kits and separate antibodies to be used in their own proprietary machines. All of Centocor's diagnostic tests were designed to be compatible with existing diagnostic systems that were allowed for both the testing and analysis of results, such as those marketed by Abbott and Roche and used by the majority of clinical laboratories. This arrangement not only helped Centocor gain a broad market penetration, but also allowed it to leverage its technical strength without threatening competitors. As David Holveck, Holveck, who headed up Centocor's diagnostics department from 1983, stated, quote, "Because of the marketing strategy of networking with all the major suppliers, we insulated ourselves from competition because we were the suppliers of the reagents and they were looking for ways of adding tests to their instrumentation," unquote. In 1983, 61% of Centocor's product sales were being sold to major distributors. 2 years later, it increased to 74%. An important catalyst in Centocor's early success was its swift winning of regulatory approval of 2 diagnostic tests. One was for gastrointestinal cancer, using an antibody licensed from Wistar, and the other for hepatitis B, developed by Zorowski and licensed from Mass General Hospital. Both the tests had reached the market by 1983. The first approval of the hepatitis test was significant as it was the first monoclonal antibody-based test approved for this disease by the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. Centocor's hepatitis B test was in high demand because from the early 1970s, many countries, including the United States, required the screening of blood intended for blood transfusion. Some idea of how popular the test was can be seen from the fact that between April and December of 1983, Centocor sold 600,000 of its hepatitis tests. Between 1983 and 86, Centocor introduced another 3 tests to the market, one for diagnosing ovarian cancer, the first diagnostic tool available for the disease, a test for breast cancer licensed from the Scripps Clinic and Research Foundation. And that makes me wonder if any of that was used with the breast cancer, the John Murtha Breast Cancer Research Center at the Winber Lab, which is not too far from where Flight 93 crashed in Pennsylvania, and another for colorectal cancer, licensed from the Wistar. All 3 tests were still used are still used in clinical practice today as of 2020. In addition to these diagnostics, Centocor also put into the market the first diagnostic test for multi-drug resistance, a major problem for cancer patients. By 1990, Centocor had captured more than a quarter of the world's market for antibody-based tests for cancer. Between 1979 and 1985, Centocor's team built up profitable business with revenues of just under $50 million. It was highly lucrative because most of the bottom line revenue came from royalties. By 1987, Centocor was one of the very few monoclonal antibodies with earnings. I've used this photo before. Let's see here. I'll have to duplicate the tab if I actually want to read the people here. Let's see here. Starting from, oh, come on. Going from left to right here on the front. This is Hubert Shoemaker. We have Hillary Kaprowski there, the guy who's leaning in. This is Zarowski, the guy with the mustache that might have actually been moonlighting as Lenny from Motorhead, but I'm not sure about that. And this is Evan, and we haven't talked too much about him. And this is Alan and Michael Wall back there. May not have time to finish this, but I will do what I can. Wow, this is going to be like a multi-part addendum. Huh. It was supposed to be quick. I had an hour. Finance. Grab as many cookies as you can. Just as fundamental as partnering with Centocor's early success was Wall and Shoemaker's ability to find capital. What helped this process was the fact that soon after setting up the company, Wall, using his previous reputation in the business world, persuaded Tony Evenen, a senior partner at Venrock Associates. Venrock, which is a combination of venture capital and Rockefeller. Yes. It was formed in 1969 to build upon the successful investing activities of the Rockefeller family, a venture capital firm, to become one of the company's directors. This was important as Venrock had a history of investment in the diagnostics and therapeutic sector. Man, there's someone I researched. Was it one of the Parsons guys who got his big start at Venrock? I think Venrock has a connection with Naubar Affian. And Naubar was the founder of Moderna. Yeah, there's a whole, man, the tangents around here, guys. All I can say is I'm so thankful that Brett Weinstein chose to be a public figure. I'm so thankful that he had that staged issue with the Commie College up in Washington State, and then wound up becoming like this somewhat of a hero in Congress and wound up on Tucker Carlson. I'm so thankful Brett Weinstein provided a forum to invite in Robert Malone, who probably already knew Brett Weinstein's father. I'm so thankful Brett Weinstein wound up being a jerk to my friend Jonathan Cooey. That encouraged me to dig in, to go, okay, why Brett Weinstein? If it wasn't for Brett Weinstein's role, visibility, I wouldn't be looking at any of this stuff. So thank you, Brett Weinstein. Thank you, Brett Weinstein, for the other day turning a discussion about the lunar eclipse into a discussion about antitrust law. Somehow, Brett Weinstein turned a conversation about lunar eclipses into something that reminded him of antitrust law, something that he said he knew a lot about. I have never seen before anyone in my life take something so out in left field and say, hey, this is a good time to talk about antitrust law. Now, maybe I just haven't known many people that well. I mean, I prefer to be a kind of a quiet person, rather just, spend the day working, on my own project, doing some research or whatever. But to take a wonderful discussion about the lunar eclipse, say, hey, this is a good time to talk about antitrust law that somehow I know a lot of stuff about. Oh, maybe it's because your dad was the first patent attorney for the United States Department of Justice in 1962, appointed by John F. Kennedy to handle the Drug Industry Antitrust Act that was brought forward by Estes Kefauver, who mysteriously died the following year. Thank you, Brett Weinstein, for bringing this up. I'm so appreciative of what you do. Keep on talking, baby. Keep on talking. Boy, I am so off the rails right here from actually just reading the article. I'm not sure I can continue. I think I just need to do comments a little bit because there's just no way I'm going to finish this. And the author, the same person that actually wrote a whole chapter on the patent issue in Cesar Milstein, somehow has yet to bring it up in this article. That one of the foundational intellectual property of Centocor is actually in and of itself up for debate. I give you guys so much credit for being here. Most people are just tempted right now to go all over to where the flashlight is telling people to be. Instead, you guys are still here and still walking through the mud, trying to unravel one of the greatest tragedies to happen in U.S. history. I give you guys a lot of credit for still being here. Kim, good. You're a hero for still being here. Christy, you're a hero in my eyes. Dawn, Serico, and Palantir were, yeah. Yes. Oh, Mark is very important vein of research. Thank you, Dawn. That's a very kind thing of you to say. If 10 other people, if that's true, and if 10 other people want to come along and do this, by all means, have at it. Have at it. I can't do it full time right now, again, because of the family situation. There's plenty to do. There's plenty to take here. There's whole books that can be written. There's Dave Weiner. And I got to go full screen on this one here. The reason why I know that Dave Weiner, W-E-I-N-E, is such an important name is because he was a key part of this book. The Big Shot AIDS vaccine book that took 4 years to write and was published the week after September 11th, 2001. This book talks about the Wistar Institute and Dave Weiner and Kaprowski. I learned about Kaprowski from this book. It came out the week after September 11th, 2001. And why did this book come out the week after September 11th, 2001? That's a date that was chosen months or a year ahead of time. You don't just say, okay, now it's time that we're going to have the books ready next week. Well, let's just release it then. I speculate the reason why this book was coming out the week after September 11th, 2001 was not because there was an expectation to have September 11th, 2001. The expectation was for sometime later that fall to have a major bioterrorism event in the United States of America. An event that was going to necessitate advancing to a new era of vaccine technology. Because as we all know, the anthrax vaccine was really bad. And fortunately, Dave Weiner and other people at Vical and VaxGen and companies like that were already working on an answer for it because of all the work they were doing on HIV. That is why this book was written, everyone. That is why this book was written. I will bet my life on it. I'm that certain of this alternative narrative. I need to read that book. We're going to read it again, Christy. I started to read it. I did a series on it. It was over 2 years ago, and we knew a lot then. But I think that the insights that could happen now would be outstanding. The part about this book that I didn't appreciate, and I mentioned this before when I first read it, because it flips back and forth between talking about the vaccine research and monoclonal antibody research. And when I first saw the chapters on monoclonals, I have to admit I didn't narrate them. I didn't read them to you guys. I read them to myself, and I didn't see how it was connected. It felt like they were two completely detached subjects, and I kind of just wanted to move past one because I thought it was just too much information. And as it turns out, these two are very much related. Of course, they're related, but it's not as if they're just two different parallel technologies that don't touch. There's lots of crossover between the two technologies, to the fact where each one is helping the other do its own, with the testing, diagnostics, research, and so on. Each one seems to be helping the other one. But my opinion on how important the book is has not changed. Oh, by the way, I don't have the article right in front of me right now, but the author, Patricia Thomas, I reached out to her. She's not interested in being interviewed. Patricia Thomas was one of the first people, I don't know how first, probably one of the first few hundred people in the United States that volunteered to get their COVID shot. 20 years later, she's still helping us out. How about that? Maybe that's why she's not up for an interview. Who knows? Okay, guys, I apologize. I'm not finishing this article. It's already 4:20. I need to head out. I'm probably way more spicy than I wanted to be on my live one, so I may repost this on live 2 later. We'll see about that. And I want to finish reading this article about Centocor. Maybe I won't. I think it already highlights what I wanted to highlight. In fact, I don't think I'm going to make another episode rereading the end of it. It highlights how important this company was, how big they were in the early era of biotech, how much they were intertwined with knowledge and intellectual property sharing, government investments, state and federal, and that getting out into industry. It is amazing that the patent issue, I think it was intellectual property theft, possibly, maybe even intentional, by Cesar Milstein, is not mentioned here, even though this Laura Marks wrote the original article. There's a lot of fishy things going on here. A lot of fishy things. And as I've shown in the map from earlier on, this is why I find this company to be so fascinating. Its long-term history, the people who were mentored by Kaprowski, of course, and the patent disputes they wound up in. And then, of course, of all the people to wind up coming in to save the day with their patent dispute was Weinstein. I said Weinstein. Obviously, that's a typo. Amazing. So I think we're on to some good stuff here. Thank you, everyone, for all your support. You guys have a fantastic day. Thanks. All right. That's all, everyone. Take care. God bless. We're going to do another addendum with the obituary of Georges Kohler probably tomorrow.